I know that's a little bit, for some of you, it has been like, oh, do I have to swallow that? Do I have to put that hat on? Am I ready to put that hat on? What about those people before me? Oh, they're retiring, or they're in a different place, and how do I wear that? And how do I step into it and become okay with that? So that's really part of it. So how you view yourself. So our goldfish, who's viewing himself or herself as a shark, and that's going to be a nice shark. That's going to be like the shark in, what was that Disney movie, right, where the shark didn't eat fish? No. Shark Tale. Shark Tale, right, where so the shark didn't eat fish because he was a nice shark. So we certainly don't want any negatives that go along with that per se. But how you view yourself is who you become. And how you see yourself is who you become. And how you see yourself is how other people see you as well. So keeping those kinds of pieces in mind. If I may, I'd like to move on and talk a little bit more about storytelling before I lose you all in a complete cortisol shower. Because, oh my gosh, poor Alex is, you really want me to stand up there tomorrow? Yeah, you're going to be great. You're going to be absolutely great. So why are we talking about storytelling? Partially, if we go back to our first day when we talked about what Cozies and Posner have to say after 25 years of research in various organizations around the world, they talked about the importance of storytelling. And they talked about the reality that people think in terms of stories. And I showed you the little video yesterday by the Dilbert cartoon creator, Scott Adams, about why Donald Trump won the US presidency, and because he was able to speak in terms of images and speak in terms of stories. And we haven't talked about this a whole lot yet in here in regard to what the brain is doing with visuals, but visuals, anytime you can give a visual, whether it's the actual picture or whether it's paint the picture in someone's mind. So I gave you the shark's mouth and all the teeth and the red gums, and it looked like blood, but it wasn't, and it was so exhilarating and scary and exciting, and all that my heart was pumping. And as I tell you that, and I create that image for you, your heart's pumping too. And so how do you, no, obviously, again, that's an adventure story. And you would probably talk a little bit more about fear. Was my daughter going to be okay? But yet I so want to encourage her. And how do I encourage her without making her more scared? And whatever those things were that were going through your mind, how do you tell that story? Because when you connect the story, when you connect whatever it is you're trying to say to an emotion, people will remember it. And they'll remember it greater. So you could stand up here and say, I'm your new general manager. It's very nice to meet you. I'm thrilled to be here. I've been in the industry for 20 years. And it's going to be like, womp, 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 and there's not going to be a whole lot of remembrance to it. So what was it that made you come alive about the industry? Or what was it that continues to make you come alive about the industry? Where's your passion to it? And as we've talked about in the last few days, what words do you use, and how do you find words that will emotionally, mentally connect with other people, that they can get jazzed about as well? Because some of those words, in fact, John, you said earlier, oh gosh, I'm not going to remember. You had 3 phrases in the gift, the framed. Tell me those phrases again. Right. So if those are your phrases and that's what you can attach to, and you still use those, why not build your story around that? Presuming that those are still the slogans or the phrases that you regularly use. So in some ways, I know when I first present this challenge to give a new presentation and do it from a different perspective, there's a lot of butterflies, let alone just out and out fear. And that's okay. But it's not, as you start to think about, this is me. Who knows you better than me, right? Who knows you better than you? Maybe it's not quite so difficult. So when we can share stories with people and we can do it in an emotional manner, people will remember better. They will connect with you. So thinking about, too, maybe the top priorities that you have in your workplace. How do you turn those priorities into some kind of a story or even a slogan? Now, some of you are people of less words. Jerome. You have less words to share very often, and part of that is being an analytic. There's lots and lots of words going on up here, as we've talked about, but you might not necessarily be a person that's comfortable sharing as many words as David would be as the expressive, right? So would I expect the same kind of story out of you?
4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay. All right. 4 minutes, okay. There you go. There you go. Which is interesting because I would have expected the expressives to recreate the rules. It's the expressives that usually recreate the rules. But that's okay because you're a man of fewer words and that's okay. So I'm giving you a sort of guideline of 8 to 10 minutes, but be calm about that and do what is comfortable. We've been telling stories for years, right? Back in the day, we still see them on cave walls and things. And so stories have been our fundamental communication method. In fact, as we look at peoples and tribes around the world that may be a variety of progress, if you want to call it that, changing technologies and impacting traditional cultures, there's concern that some languages are going away. And there's a couple of tribes in the world that they think that this might be the last generation of that tribe and or at least the last generation of that particular language. Well, when that language goes away, what then happens to how they tell stories, communicate about who they are as a culture? As Scots that are very proud to be Scots, and I think that's one of the neatest things about your culture, how do you continue to talk about that? As an example, Alex, you talked earlier when you said you spoke 3 languages, and when you speak in Russian versus when you speak in English, you have people who tell you you're a different person. The language that you use, the words that you use. So how do you connect with people when you tell a story from that perspective? Scientifically speaking, when all we do is speak at you, 2 areas of the brain, Broca's and Wernicke's area. When all we do is speak at you and all we do is give you PowerPoints, it means absolutely nothing and nothing happens. And Monica, you've expressed that. That's not the way that you learn. That's not the way that you appreciate receiving information, which is why I try to do some additional things and I try to get you engaged in thinking about your own staff, your own involvement, where are you going immediately with the content that we've talked about, where are you going in 3 months, where are you going in 6 months with it, how do you take it back and put it into practice? This is why you see me be kind of all over the place and loud and quiet and introspective and things like that, because I know if I don't do that, this is going to mean nothing. The background to it doesn't mean anything to you. But stories literally change the brain. Literally change the brain, change the way we think about things, change the way we interpret, change the way the information is allowed in, let alone processed and allowed back out. The reality is if you tell someone, you're all foodie people, or to some degree, some of you much more foodie people than others with chef backgrounds and F&B backgrounds. If you tell someone how good the food is and explain the food, the reality is a sensory part of their brain lights up. Again, speaking in terms of make me smell it, make me taste it, make me salivate for it, and the reality is my brain will think that I'm tasting it or I'm having that same experience. So a story really puts your brain to work, and that's why we're gonna share it in this way, and it also will give people a completely different perspective on you. Some people, as you went through your values on the first day, and then on the second day, you went through some more commitments and time and things like that in last night's homework. Notice I didn't ask you to share that information because I know how personal that is. I mean, the values piece for some of us is very, very hard to do. So how do you become comfortable enough with what you share versus what you don't share? This is the very first day when we talked about the communication behavioral styles, the top of the iceberg. The top of the iceberg, we only see a third of it. What is it we share? What is it we allow to people to see versus the whole and who we really are? So I don't know if you can see the little cartoon here, but it's the baby alligator saying, "Tell us again, Grandpa, about the time that you almost had Tarzan for lunch." So when we tell stories, we literally help to shape people's way of thinking, people's way of getting on board. You're trying to create more dynamic teams. You're trying to create more trust within your organization. When you can tell who you are, and this is what, and the reality is this could be anything. I'm asking you to introduce who you are or to introduce back. You go back into your organization, you've just been away for 4 or 5 days. how do you introduce back, this is who I am, this is what I've learned or assimilated or embraced from where I've been. But by telling the information in a story rather than just blah, 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 we did this, we did that, when you can plant ideas in people's minds, thoughts and emotions, it will literally change how they embrace you and how they embrace the concept. So the reality is evolution has wired our brains for stories. If you want someone to remember something, tell it to them in a story. You will probably never forget me telling the story of shark cage diving in the terms of the way that I expressed it. And so so if the Broca and Wernicke's area of the brain doesn't just get charged or interested, stimulated in terms of words, then why are we talking about this? Because the insula piece of the brain, for those of you who want to know exactly where this is happening, a story gives you cause and effect. A story gives you cause and effect. And we think in stories all day long. We hear in stories and metaphors also. So for those of you, Jerome, as an example, I have already heard you say you've given me 4 minutes tomorrow, so I'm holding you to that. Not really. The reality is some people may only need to tell a metaphor. You had 3 slogans that your staff, when they shared with you that thank you gift of a photo, that's what they remembered about you. And there was a lot of emotion that was tied to that, and there was a lot of feeling that was tied to that. So some people, it might not be a whole story that they want, they actually just need a metaphor. And that really kind of explains things for them. But is a metaphor enough? This is the question that I challenge you with. Is a metaphor enough to give new people insight into you? Those people who wrote those 3 little slogans knew you. But if I'm new to you and I don't know that, will that make sense to me? And how do you then get that across? So you might need a little bit more sometimes than just a metaphor or just a slogan as an example.
Do you think we naturally, we're not going to show all of ourselves to people from an initial start point?
Of course not.
Yeah.
But we're probably not going to ever show all of ourselves anyway. You know, think of what your people, how many things about you do your staff not know? Probably a lot for some of you. And some of this gets into the communication behavioral styles that we talked about. How much do you allow someone to see as an expressive who sometimes wears their heart on their sleeve? I'm not sure if you do that because I haven't necessarily seen that because you're an interesting expressive. You're quite expressive. Maybe that's the golf in you, right? Maybe that's all those years of golf that you learn to be a little bit, quiet the mind, quiet the body, quiet the thought process. But the warmth of the expressiveness, there's no question that I definitely feel that with you. I lost my train of thought. What'd you say?
Sorry?
I lost my train of thought. What'd you ask?
We naturally don't show everyone ourselves.
Mm.
It's got to be linked to trust, isn't it?
Right. Think about who gets insight into sort of the deepest, darkest excitements, fears, anxieties, all of those kinds of things. I mean, who do you share with? We talked last night about who do you share with professionally? Do you have a network of people? Who do you talk to? When you reach the top, as here you are, who do you talk to? And who can you really talk to? Because you certainly can't talk to your staff very often, right? So who do you share those kinds of things with? And how many of those sorts of concerns, excitements, fears, what have you, can you share with your spouse or your partner, as an example? So you're right, we only show a certain amount, and more trust with that person, maybe a little bit more, and more trust with that person, a little bit more. But still, there's always going to be the outside self of who we walk out the door with and put on the persona to versus who we are, the inside self, meaning who you are inside your home and with the people that you're closest to.
It's just like your iceberg yesterday, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
100% showing maybe and you've got the rest underneath.
Yeah, absolutely. So that iceberg, 2/3 of the iceberg is underwater, and those are the things that you can't change about yourself. You can't change your birth order, you can't change where you grew up, you can't change who your parents were, those sorts of things. You can change how you think about them, but you can't change who they necessarily are, and so how much those things have impacted you. So the takeaway of storytelling, and I know for some of you, you're still in this level of anxiety about, do I really have to do this, is kind of an interesting thing. How many of you have experienced where you told someone something and then 2 weeks later they came back to you and said the exact same thing as if they were their words? And you're like, now assuming that wasn't colleague sabotage or workplace sabotage, that's what stories do. You told them, you're giggling there, you have that experience in mind, don't you, Graham? Sorry?
My whole life. Nothing to do with work. No, but I think you do get people coming back with the same, then you've won, I think.
Absolutely, you've
like
won. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When they repeat your words, if you can get beyond that, was that cultural, a colleague sabotaging me, you've won. Because now they're on board with what, and when you can make it their thought and they repeat it back to you, even better. But again, now we got that little ego guy involved, right? And what's going on in your head to say, I told you that 2 weeks ago. Why did all of a sudden this become your idea? Have we all experienced
it? It could be down even just to the language actually you use as well, not actually the result, but actually using key words that you use as well. And you hear them using these words as well, and you're thinking, okay, that's obviously registered with them, that's good. Well, it gives you probably a wee bit of a push as well. I think, okay, well, he's registered, that's great news, because it's worked for me, it's worked for this person, and it's a nice feeling.
And that's why stories. So stories, metaphors, phrases, whatever it might ultimately be, whatever you feel most comfortable with. I'm not asking you to share something that you wouldn't want to share, that you're not comfortable sharing. And never am I asking you to walk outside that comfort zone. You all know how much you are willing to give to a new staff, as an example. So, and frankly, here's another thing. We've talked about challenges with bosses, challenges with owners. Is there a way to reintroduce where you've been, what you've just done, the content that we've shared, and introduce that to that person through the story to make them understand or see you differently? So that person, as an example, who, if someone is an extreme amiable and your boss is an extreme analytic, how do we find that language to really connect with and speak to them? So it doesn't have to go downward. It can go laterally to colleagues. It can go up to owners and bosses and boards and things like that. But when you can speak it in their language, but your emotion, right? Your story of your emotion. And of course, what do I mean by emotion? Certainly I'm not asking you to cry, and I'm not asking you to, be loud and whatever extreme kinds of emotions you might find extreme for you. I'm asking you to do this in your comfort zone, in your comfort level, but putting your words into feelings and emotions so people actually connect with you. Because that's what people will remember, and they will understand you differently. So using just this one presentation as hopefully what becomes something you do more. So if you go back to what are my 3 top initiatives I'm trying to accomplish or achieve or fix or change, that scary C word, how can I frame things in a different perspective so people can get on board with them? The reality is a story is the only way to activate parts of the brain so that the listener will turn the story into their own idea and their own experience. Simply talking at them, giving them a sheet of information, sharing a slide presentation, that's not going to make them that listener embrace what's ultimately going on. Doing it through stories, which is why I keep asking you, tell me a time when, tell me what's going on in your staff, in your department, in your team, tell me what's happening. Because the more you can embrace the content into your own experience, the more it becomes your experience, the more it becomes what you have done. So when you struggle with getting people on board with projects or ideas or what have you, tell them a story. That will help bring them along. Again, for those of you who are like, where do I start? Like, what kind of story? Well, once upon a time is always a good start. There's great quotes. You gave a quote from an individual who you worked with when you talked about the most encouraging words that you've ever heard, there's certainly, so what this is showing is classic storytelling, sort of the how-to, if you were to truly be a writer and you were sitting in a writing course, how do I do this? So the opening scene, the beginning, and you have some crises in the beginning. So you sort of go up and you peak and you come back down. You bring the person back up and you peak and come back down. You crescendo up, you come back down. Then you get the middle. And in the middle, this is tension. And then you get to a climax, and then the resolution, and then the end. So again, I'm trying to present this in different ways. Some of you, once upon a time is absolutely more than enough. Others of you might want, tell me how to write a story. Like, where do I start? How do I put my experience and my values and my expectations into words, right? So I'm trying to present this in different ways based on what kind of a listener you are and how you synthesize information. And I see some of you writing, so I will let you continue to write as there are 2 pages to this handout. So on the one side, you have your homework, which is a little bit about the appreciation languages and how we started talking before we went for lunch about 2 pages.
The first one missing. No, it's fine. Thank you very much.
So the first one, the homework assignment. So how do we take the appreciation languages that we're learning and try to start to put them into action and an action plan? Again, thinking through the immediate when you go back, 3 months, 6 months, how do we start to use this? Where will we use it? With whom will we use it, as an example? And then the culmination of where we've been for the last 4 days tomorrow, your presentation of your story, of your values and your expectations. And again, through your eyes. I have absolutely no expectation other than that you tell me about your values and your expectations through a story. And if you want to start by telling me who you're addressing, like if we're supposed to be your board, or we're supposed to be your owner, are we supposed to be your executive team, who are you addressing with this story that you're sharing of who you are or what you've learned, what you've embraced, those kinds of things. On the second sheet of the handout, you'll notice lots of different thought processes, basically, about how to write a story. You know, are you a dragon slayer, or are you sailing the high seas, or do you write in terms of metaphors, or do you write in terms of colors? Do you write in terms of movie clips and key phrases from key movies? Of course, the more you tell me about something, if you're a movie buff, that's awesome, right? So I've had people do that everything they talk about. How many of you ever see the U.S. television show NCIS? Okay, so Tony DiNozzo's character in there always gives you some crazy movie quote, and sometimes it's perfectly placed, and sometimes it's, you know, he gets the hit on the back of the head from Gibbs, right? And so, if that, you know, that's who he is. He sees a lot of movies. Some of you might do that in terms of theater. Some of you might do it in terms of songs. Doing that, providing that extra little piece, which might be truly something you wouldn't share outside the surface level of the iceberg, right? What we share with other people. But all of a sudden, they're seeing some other additional piece. When all of a sudden I know that someone is really charged with this is your favorite sports team, what kind of dogs you like, what kind of wine you drink, what kind of music you listen to, all of a sudden I have another piece that I can connect with you on. And of course, that's what it's all about, right? It's connecting. It's about trust. It's about building team dynamics. So how do we get people to ultimately connect and bond with us and pair with us? The simpler, the better. The simpler, the better. This doesn't have to be lengthy. This doesn't have to be, you know, some extremely long oratory presentation. And some of the best speeches in history are not very long. Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address is very, very short. It's only a few minutes. And yet that speech, that presidential speech, had an absolutely profound effect on our history and what we continue to quote and what we think about in regard to who Abraham Lincoln was as president. So it doesn't have to be long. The simpler, the easier it will stick. Remember I told you 7 pieces of information is too much. Or at 7 we lose it. We start to filter things out. So the shorter, the better. So how many things do you really share? You might have 15 values. By the way, how do we do with values? Were we able to do 4? I said you could go 6. I said you could go 3. How do we do with that? 5, 4. Yeah. Was it hard to actually pinpoint? No? Yes? No? Both? Was it hard to whittle that list down? Because you wanted to, did you start with more? Yeah? Do you remember how many you started with, approximately? Graham?
It was 7 or so, and then just, obviously it gets more difficult. But then I learned to put my what kind on, and stick to my what kind.
Ah. So if I were to ask you that in a personal setting, it might be different.
I don't think so.
Yeah? And others find the same?
You know it?
Was your personal and your work hat the same in terms of your values? Yeah? Same? Yes. Hard? Not hard. Depends on the person, right? Really, and it also depends on when's the last time you did an exercise like that, or if you've ever been asked to do an exercise like that. Or are you currently already living your values anyway and expressing them, and so this is just something you do anyway. So not a very big deal. The simpler the language, but remember language, what did we learn? 7% is words, 93% is interpretation. 7% is words, 93% is interpretation. We tried to define success today. We tried to define winning, and we all defined it very, very differently. So how do we get to that true understanding to make us understand and to make our staffs understand? So your homework, your presentation, what's the story you'll tell? How will you introduce yourself? Who will you tell the story to? So kind of starting from that perspective might make things a little bit easier. Alex, are you quivering back there, or are you doing okay?
Okay.
I think. You're going to be great. You're going to be great. So a lot of different things. As an example in storytelling, who are your characters? Do you speak about one particular person, and how do you speak about that person? Do you turn that person into a character format in terms of how they look and who they are and what they say? You certainly don't have to reveal anybody. I'm not asking for an autobiography per se. I'm asking you to express your values and your expectations. But it can certainly be done. It can be done in third person. It's lots of different ways that you ultimately could do this. Where did the story occur? When and where? Is there a conflict? Is there a drama? Good stories often have a drama or some kind of tension, as an example. Did emotional intelligence play a role in this? Courage play a role in this? Conviction? All of these sorts of things. So, talk to me. Are we perplexed? Does this make sense?
So what do we need to do, sorry?
Yes, you need to do a story. Of course you need to do a story.
Okay, so we need to do a presentation tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
about our learnings.
But your values
3 days.
and your expectations.
Okay.
So if you think of it in terms of you're either introducing yourself to someone new,
Yeah.
say you're moving to a new hotel, or you're reintroducing yourself back to this group of people
Okay.
that you currently work with in terms of, let me share some more information with you.
All right.
Let me change the dynamics of our relationship. Let me give you a little more about me. Someone says, let me give you a little more about me, and I go, oh, come into the fold. Let me embrace you, right? The more we learn, hopefully the more we can embrace someone. So I can give you all kinds of ideas potentially to plant in your head about how you do that, but it's your story. And we all have a story. Frankly, we all have a story. We've even heard some of that in terms of the greatest gift that we've ever received that we just talked about, or the most encouraging thing that someone said to us and how that impacted us. It's not the words per se, it's how they made us feel, which is basically what you're trying to do here, is how are you trying to make this new staff or owner or whomever feel.
So Andrea, are we doing this first thing in the morning, or
Well, here comes the negotiation. What do you tell me?
I'm just wondering, so I know if I need to have it ready for the morning, or if I need to have it ready for 2 o'clock in the
You have that extra
afternoon.
pint tonight.
Can you have an extra pint tonight
Or not. Yeah.
or not?
Do we draw lots for tomorrow morning then about who's up?
Do you want to do that, or do you just want to volunteer?
Just throw it out there.
Hmm.
I'm also thinking, if you were to have one word right now about how you're feeling about this, what would the one word be?
Oh.
Would be in this room?
Very good. You're asking that question?
I'm just asking you if you think that would be a good question.
I think that would be a really good question. One word. How you feeling about doing
I
this?
think everyone feels okay except me.
Listen to them.
Alex, I think you're about to get a lot of reassurance there. That's like smiley faces. Oh yeah. We're still stuck up here, afraid to ask for help, whereas you're being honest and going, oh my God, what's going on? We're all probably thinking the same.
Especially with cameras around. And
The cameras won't be here tomorrow. I guarantee it. They will not be here tomorrow. But thank you. Thank you, David. So, would you like to start? Do you have a word?
I don't have a clue what I'm going to do, but I'm excited.
Excited is your word. Thank you. Good.
I'm trying to find an excuse not to do it. Yeah, try it. Yeah, might be anything.
Might be an idea that you run it by somebody before you actually do it. Run it over as a bit of support after service.
I'll think about it.
Okay, that'll be a no then.
But thanks.
She's actually thinking, what, do it twice?
A word. Who's got a word?
Thoughtful.
Thoughtful.
Yeah.
Good.
Thoughtful.
Thoughtful. Nervous.
inadequate.
Inadequate.
Somebody hug. Can you hug him?
No, no touching the tire.
But you're amazing. You really
said
are.
that before.
You are. You are. Remember, you're an executive scholar.
Yeah.
Yeah, you deserve to be here. Yeah, you have a perfect place at this table based on what you've done and where you've been, and most of all, who you are. I got a little bit there. A little bit. Is this making you feel better? Because they're feeling the same way,
Yeah.
or very similar at least.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. And absolutely, find support. Find support. Who do you get support from? Who do you get support from when you're in this state of whatever words? Fear, terror, anxiety, inadequacy, frustration. Someone's just damaged your spirit, your soul, your credibility. How do you come back from that? Who do you talk to? Because
An ally.
say again.
An ally. Somebody you can trust in.
An ally that you can trust. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I got 3 words. I need
Apprehension.
apprehension.
Also exciting.
Exciting? Yeah. Okay. 2 exciting.
Well, I
Oh.
would add to that I've probably come from a position where Alex has been, where it would be very nervous. Or
Exciting and nervous, or you might have in the past been there.
in the past, probably very nervous. The nervous would always be there, I think.
Yeah.
And it's important to feel nervous, I think.
It is important to feel nervous. The question is does it become debilitating nervous, or does it become motivating nervous? Right? I asked you the other day, have you ever done anything in your life that was truly monumental or exciting that there wasn't a level of stress involved in? Probably not. So in the same way, some of that nervousness or fear is,
Yeah, I've read a book and it says like whenever you feel nervous, do not tell yourself that oh, I'm nervous. Tell yourself that I'm excited.
well,
So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
You're going to win
I
that
am
tennis
excited.
match. You're going to win that tennis match.
And then,
Alex, sorry,
you really-
Alex, your father. Go back to your father's statement. You should believe in yourself more. And you won the game. You won the tennis match. She's gritting her teeth as she's... I'm sorry, I cut you off.
You said earlier,
Yeah.
So why shouldn't you feel confident?
I'm not asking you to tell anything that you don't know. I'm not asking you to share some sort of knowledge or intellect or, something that, oh, what if they don't know? What if they know more than I do? Or what if I sound stupid up here? You're not going to sound stupid because it's your story. And you're perfect as you are. How are we doing with that? You're perfect as you are. You are a Scott Executive Scholar. You all deserve to be at this table. You all deserve it. You are perfect as you are. I'm not asking you to change anything about you. Consider the words you use. Consider how you make other people feel to keep them safe. But how are we doing with that one? I'm feeling a little less chatter. There's a little more introspection, I think. There's not an immediate, I'm not, I need to work on this, I need to do that, I need to do the other. So I can feel this. I can feel that tension from you when the very first time I said, you are perfect as you are. You are Hit Scotland Executive Scholars. Absolutely amazing at what you do, hence the reason you're sitting here. And when I first said it, you just absolutely pushed back on me. I felt the electrochemical reaction. Now you're going, So you're thinking about it. You're embracing it, perhaps. The goldfish is putting on the shark fin, the nice shark fin from Shark Tale. Right? I need some more words here. Reflection.
Because we have to evaluate our path in the future, what we did, and also the future attitude. So it's like a balance over our life.
Ah, excellent. I like that. Reflection.
What will be, so that's fine. I'm not going to die.
I think I need a little more information there, Martin.
Go with it.
Just go with it. Was that was that similar to your?
No, it
Oh.
wasn't, but, nerves kick in and stuff, but, you can't do anything about it, so just do it. Just do it.
Well, and the more you talk about it, find an ally, find support. The more you talk about it, the easier it becomes. And once you start to decide what kind of framework do I want my story to be in, whether it's once upon a time, or I'm a dragon slayer, or I'm sailing the high seas, or I'm the soccer star, I kick the goal, or whatever it might ultimately be. I aspire to be Auguste Escoffier, whatever it might ultimately be. I need some more words here. Mark? Stimulated. Ooh, they're getting better. Stuart?
Apprehension.
Oh, apprehension.
Just in case you change your mind.
I'm feeling better about it. Less happens.
Oh, acceptance. From apprehension to acceptance. I like that. How are we doing over there? You're breathing still? do I need to bring in the oxygen? Do we need to open the windows? Fan you? How come we didn't Did any of you feel that? None of you felt, see, right? Are you genuine and authentic? Are you genuinely presenting the appreciation languages? And that wasn't very authentic.
I want to swear, but I can't.
You can! We'll bleep that out. We'll bleep that out.
For you, would you feel a lot more confident if you're speaking in your own language in Russia?
Ah.
I don't know, it depends about what I'm talking. For example, if I talk about my career and my work environment, I don't even know those words in Russian.
Ah.
Sometimes when I have to deal with the Russian guest, I can't explain because I don't have this terminology. I don't know all the words in Russian, but it's easier for me to explain myself in English, especially when I tell my parents what's happening at work. Half of the words I'm using there in English because I just don't know how to translate them.
I think sometimes it's also just that fact that you're saying, do a presentation or tell the story. We all do that every single day.
Absolutely, you do.
In our environment, we're talking to guests every single day
Mm-hmm.
and presenting to them in short snippets.
And staff as well.
Staff as well, yeah.
explaining and re-explaining, and you know when someone's not getting it and not on board and not understanding how to do something in particular. And so you explain and you re-explain, and well, let me tell you too from this perspective, and let me try it from here. You do it. You're absolutely right. You do this every single day. Jerome, did you give me a word?
Kind of, yeah, confused.
Confused. Okay. Okay. Processing. Everybody got? Are you still in this? Just go with it.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I'm feeling something a little different. I'm getting a little different electrochemical reaction.
I go to the toilet, please.
All right. Thoughts, questions?
May we have, for example, half an hour in the course while we are in the lecture to at least point out.
That's exactly what I was planning to do right now.
points.
That's exactly what I was planning to do right now, because you're likely feeling a little bit overwhelmed or apprehensive or just going with it, even though that going might be down the hall, but you know, right? So that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to stop here for a minute, like as a group. You're going to take some time to be in reflection, introspection, writing, whatever mode that you're actually in. If you want to do that downstairs with a cup of coffee, if you want to go somewhere else within the building or outside, you're welcome to do that. What I would ask is that for those of you who would be willing to provide some feedback on content and delivery and what you think of this whole process, Fabio and Juan are going to ask you to meet in 1:15 to do that. So. How could you copy each other? And it's your story. Oh, comment to each other. Sorry.
So when you want us to do the storytelling, is it just us, or can you use?
You can use whatever you want. If you have a need to use something off the internet or something off of a thumb drive or what have you that you want to share. If you want to share an artifact, sometimes for some people who get nervous about these things, it's easier to have a thing. It's easier to have a thing in their hands. It could represent who you are, and you want to talk about that or talk around that as an example. So I completely leave it open to what your story ultimately is, but it's you, and you're absolutely perfect as you are. So I'll put that down so it doesn't seem like you're not perfect as you are. Because
is there any specific dress code though?
No, and there's also no specific dress code. I mean, you're doing this theoretically for a work environment. If you feel more comfortable in a work professional attire, you all saw me yesterday in a completely different attire. But yeah, if you're much more comfortable in...
Still very classy.
Not filmed, no. No, filming is going away after today. If you're more comfortable in jeans and casual clothes, I'm completely fine with that. As will everybody be in the building. So you're completely fine to dress how you are. I told you I like to be a little bit of a rebel. So, coffee, clothing.
2 questions. Do we have a team photograph together, all of us at any point?
That would be really great. Can we do that, Fabio?
Sorry?
Can we do a team photograph?
He was asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah.
He's only listening to what you feel the same.
What was she saying? With the headphones, I can't hear you.
He was processing. He was processing.
No, I'm wondering if we can get a team photograph together.
Yeah, we can do that.
That'd be great.
Here, maybe.
Or we can do it on the staircase too, if that would be better.
Yeah, okay.
Good. Okay, so team photograph, one question.
Second question, you say we've got half an hour to do this. What are we doing after the half an hour when we get back, or do you?
We've got some more appreciation languages and we've got some more conversational intelligence. So we have more content, but now this is the problem, is I know that your brains and your thought processes are a presentation. So I leave that open as well in terms of how much more content do I stuff in there versus this presentation.
That's great.
Because the reality is, once you start to do this, I guarantee once you've given the presentation, Alex, breathe with me.
I think we've all been thinking that actually. Okay.
Alex is going first. Thank you for volunteering. I didn't volunteer is what she's saying to me. You did. So let's take, let's take until 4 o'clock, and then we'll reconvene. And for those of you who, as I said, would be willing to give some feedback to Fabio and Juan, they're going to do that in 1:15, which is the last door on the left before the double doors. And we'll see you back here at 4, or you can stay here and do whatever it is. And then at 4, we'll do our group shot, our group photo. Answer your questions?
Great, thank you. Just had the 2.
You just had the 2. Anybody else? Questions, comments, thoughts? Breath in together. And out.